Hey guys, okay, so we're back. If you did as I asked, then you've already done the SpongeBob Bikini Genetics. But if you felt okay about going on, then here we are. Okay, so now that I've told you that some traits are dominant and some traits are recessive, things in nature do not always work out the way Mr. Mendel discovered that they do. In fact, we just started learning about dominant and recessive. But there are things called incomplete dominance and codominance. So we're going to talk about the exceptions to the rule, if you will. Okay, so incomplete dominance. What happens when you mix the colors red and white? Does 75% of the paint stay red and 25% of the paint stay white? No, of course it doesn't. We all know that 100% of the paint stays pink. This happens in nature also. Okay, so what happens in incomplete dominance is that this P generation stands for parental generation, okay, when we're doing the crosses. So one of the parents will be red, which is usually the dominant color, and then white is almost always the recessive color, okay? So what happens in incomplete dominance is similar to what happens when we do our paint. Okay, we mix the genes and the F1, okay, the familial 1 generation, they all come out pink, 100% come out pink. And, this is great for the F1 generation, so every time you want to get pink flowers, we know that people who own nurseries for trees and flowers and plants know how to breed a pink plant every single time if they operate with incomplete dominance. Not every plant does that. Okay, so here's some practice, okay? So R is the allele for red. And remember, allele is just another term for a version of a gene, okay? So there's an allele for hair color, there's an allele for eye color, there's an allele for freckles, there's an allele for curly hair. I mean, everything that you can think of has an allele. Okay, so R is the allele for red flowers, and W is the allele for white flowers. So if red times white equals pink for incomplete dominance, then all of your offspring have to have one R and one W. Okay, so let's look over here. Okay, so here would be whichever mom or dad plant, whatever you want to call it. Here's the red one. Okay, it's got to be homozygous dominant for red. And these, it doesn't represent it well, but these should really, well, I guess it doesn't matter. So these are homozygous dominant for white, even though typically whites are recessive. It doesn't matter in incomplete dominance. So we do the cross, okay? So it's going to have an R and a W and an R and a W, and this goes on through all squares. And so you get 100% pink. Okay, so incomplete dominance, you need to write this down, is a cross between organisms with two different phenotypes. Okay, so let's go back for just a second. The genotype is just the letter representation, and the phenotype is the physical representation. So genotype for these offspring for the F1 would be RW, but the phenotype would be pink, okay? So with incomplete dominance, a cross between organisms with two different phenotypes, which means physical characteristics, produces an offspring with a third phenotype that is a blending of the parental traits. So what that is to say is that a red flower and a white flower have two different phenotypes, right? They look different. They create offspring with a third phenotype, meaning they don't have any offspring that are red, and they don't have any offspring that are white. They have a third phenotype that does not appear in either of the parents. That is a blending of parental traits. I'm trying to think what works this way. Skin color works this way. I'm going blank right now. Okay, so I want you to pause the video here, and these are practice questions that I've put in. I'll read them to you, and then you answer, and then the answers are later in this podcast. It's the next slide, I think. 1. A cross between a blue blah blah bird and a white blah blah bird produces offspring that are silver. The color of blah blah birds is determined by just two alleles. A, what are the genotypes of the parent blah blah birds in the original cross? I need the genotype of the mom and the genotype of the dad. B, what is /R the genotypes of the silver offspring? C, what would be the phenotypic ratio of offspring produced by 2 silver blah blah birds? Okay, now that 1C, that question is asking if we mated their offspring, what would the phenotypes of the second, the F2 generation be? So that's taking that question deeper. So pause the video here, okay, and try and answer these on your own. Draw a Punnett square using the question. Okay, you can make up your own letters or alleles for the blah blah birds that are blue and the blah blah bird that's white. Typically people just use BB and WW. So anyway, here we go, if you're ready for the answers. Question 1. What are the genotypes of the parent blah blah birds in the original cross? Well, since there's 2 alleles and 3 phenotypes, right, blue, white, and silver, we must be dealing with incomplete dominance. This is the type of question that if you run into it on the end of course exam, you're going to assume that you can tell from the question that it is incomplete dominance, because at no other point in life do we get 3 phenotypes from 2 genotypes, okay? This is a completely specific situation. And so they're not going to tell you on the end of course like, okay, alert, alert, it's incomplete dominance. No, you're going to have to figure this out yourself, so this is good practice. Okay, so the blue parent, I just use B's, okay, is homozygous blue, which is BB, and the white parent is homozygous white, WW. So that is 1A. For 1B, what are the genotypes of the silver? They have to be BW, with 1 blue allele and 1 white allele to show the mixing. Neither one will dominate each other, they will just blend instead. So I know when you mix blue and white in real life you get like baby blue, but for some reason on all of these standardized exam questions they say that you get silver. C, what would the phenotypic ratios of offspring produced by 2 silver blah blah birds be? This one was actually very difficult since I haven't been in class with you. Silver times silver, so that's BW times BW. The Punnett square would look like what you see on this next slide, okay? So it's going to look like this. You get something that you probably didn't expect. So we put our 2 silver blah blah birds on each of the things. So here's our silver bird, here's our other silver bird. So first letter, first letter. So this blah blah bird would be blue, this blah blah bird would be silver, silver, and white. So half would be silver, 25 would be blue, and 25 would be white. This just says exactly what I just said about the percentages of the phenotypes. Codominance. Okay, let's talk about the word co. Co means together, cooperate, coexist. We're constantly doing things together, okay? So with codominance, a cross between organisms with 2 different phenotypes produces offspring with yet a third phenotype in which they both appear together. These are interesting, so it's best to look at pictures. So here's what I'm trying to say. You're going to have a red flower and a white flower, and it's not going to come out pink in codominance. Parts of the flower are going to be red and white spotted, just like the text that I've included there. It's quite peculiar. Here's an example of codominance on a flower. It looks like a bad tie-dye job, okay? This is what codominance looks like in nature. Instead of the whole thing being pink, they share dominance, okay? This is like your blood type. So here's the pink or the red, okay? And then the white says, no, I'm dominant too in codominance, and so parts of it will appear bleached out and white. And wherever that white is represented will be a white spot. Oh, okay, so that's the end of this podcast. In your packet, there are things for you to practice for incomplete dominance and codominance. I think it's after sex-linked genes, because that's a whole other podcast, okay? So, be careful and email me if you have any questions, okay?